cool. Okay, first of all, before I tell you the joke, if any of you, if I speak too fast, please raise your hand, okay? Okay, no, be brave. Don't be shy. Raise your hand, okay? Masha, raise your hand if I speak too fast.
So for those, we have a video record, you see, yeah?
Yes, okay. So, there is a joke, an analogy about Russians that I learned in Ukraine. And there is a whole bunch of Ukrainians or Russians that are sitting in shit up to their necks, okay? And they're just going like this. They're about ready to drown. And they're going like this, and they're about ready to drown. And there's a white knight that comes on his horse, and he comes up. He says, "I'm here to save you." And the Russians say, "Fuck you, we're fine." So, yes? So, I was told by one of my contacts that Russians don't want help and they don't need help. If you come in as an outsider and you say, "I want to help," they will say, "We don't want your help." So, that said.
Thank you.
Make Russia great again. All right. What I'm going to do, yes.
I'm Macedonian, not either Russian or Ukrainian, but what was the joke for?
The joke was saying that no matter how bad it is in Russia, people don't want help. They don't want help. They don't want outside help.
That is reality. It's not fun. It's reality. But okay.
Yes, it's a reality.
It's a US human, don't worry.
Yeah, but especially with Russians. So anyway. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Russian foreign policy. And some ideas about the future. We talked about not being reactionary, but being progressive. And Arshad, you talked about, you always have incredible ideas, and you talked about what they call in America, we're going to talk about it. It's called psychological operations or psychops. Okay? Now, these are the suggestions that I have as an outsider. Did it come up? It didn't. And I'm going to talk about each one of these. China relations, which me and our partner Maxime talked a lot about yesterday. Hiring public relations. Cyber attacks. Spying. Abolish intellectual property rights. Stop using the dollars as an international currency, and finally, NATO to Iran and other countries. These are low risk, low money. These are very high risk.
For whom? The risk for whom?
For Russia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for Russia.
They think so.
So, let me give you a little bit of background because it's important to give a background on where this all comes from. Let's see here. Okay. This is a graph of how many people have died in World War II, what you call the Great Patriotic War, and these are the deaths from people in war internationally since World War II. So you have the Korean War, you have the Vietnam War, etc. And as you see, despite the news, the number of people who have died in war has gone down since World War II. And the United States has been involved in every one of these wars. This. Conservative estimates is that the United States has killed 6 million people since the end of World War II. This is the same number of people that Hitler killed in the Holocaust with the Jews. The United States has killed since 1945 to today. That's conservative. I believe it's actually more. So, Now, Mr. Macedonia, we talked about something that you brought up, is that there is peace in mutual assured destruction. There's actually peace in nuclear weapons. The reason why we haven't had another world war is because of nuclear weapons. North Korea observed what happened to Iraq and Libya, and they realized that America could not be trusted. It is beneficial to peace that North Korea has a nuclear bomb, and nuclear history has shown that the more countries that have the nuclear bomb, the safer the world will be. So, I'm not going to go into this, but I've studied a lot. That's also here. I'm not going to go into this too much. Okay. But Arshad, you mentioned what is called in America psychological operations. And at the beginning of the Cold War, historical records, which are now public in the United States, show how Americans planned to avoid nuclear war by lying and advancing propaganda. It's nicknamed PsychOps. And did Russia come to the same conclusion? I don't know. I haven't studied open KGB records. But this is what runs the world today. Because of nuclear weapons, this is the way the world is run. This is the way that America not only controls the world, but this is the way that the American government controls its own people. And America is 20 years ahead of Russia or any other country. They know how to control people through psychological operations. Because you cannot have a war. We cannot have a world war because it's mutually assured destruction. If we have a world war, we will all die. And so since we can't have a war, we have to lie and we have to have advanced propaganda. Okay, so jump to 2015. China. 2015 marked the beginning of the Chinese century and the end of the American century. In 2015, a lot of people, including the economists, said that the American century is over, and the Chinese century has begun. Okay. Can we skip that one, I think? Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Napoleon said that all empires die of indigestion. Basically, all empires, they swallow up other countries, and that's how they die, is by taking over other countries. And that's what's happening right now with America, is that some historians argue that the Afghan War, which America helped create against the Soviet Union, is what caused, it did not only made the Soviet Union collapse, it actually is going to make America collapse. And that's where we're at right now. There's what in propaganda, there's two types of power in propaganda. There's what's called hard power, and there's what's called soft power. Does anybody know what soft power is?
Non-violence measures?
Yes, it's what you said, propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Soft power, media, psychological operations. Okay, so as America's soft power has gone down, its ability to control people, its hard power, its military power has gone up. And that's what's happening, is it's fighting all these countries and it's doing all this violence because its power is going down. So, okay. So, why is this important? Why am I talking about this? The reason I'm talking about this is does anybody want to read this? Marsha, our English expert.
This is important because America is fading superpower. With mutual assured destruction, the United States' options are severely limited against Russia and other nuclear countries. Proxy war, example, war in Syria or in Ukraine. Propaganda, psychological operation, and sanctions are the only realistic options that America has against Russia. As I share this foreign policy options with my business.
Okay, that's the reason I brought it up. So, thank you, Marsha. Okay, so you're going to see this a lot. I'm going to talk about this, okay? I'm going to talk about the options that Russia has to become a great power again. All right, China relations. Do you want to, Maxine, do you want to explain this? No? Okay. We talked about this. Okay, let's see here. I think this is one of the best options that Russia has. Why Chinese relations are so vital to Russian interest. China can economically cripple the United States. And just to give you a perspective, is that the last great empire was the British Empire. And a lot of people think that the British Empire ended in 1945 with the end of the Cold War. In reality, a lot of historians say that the British Empire ended in 1956. Now, what happened in 1956? It was the Suez invasion. Now, in the Suez invasion, there were three people that were against Egypt, or three countries. There was Israel, there was France, and there was Britain. And what happened is that those three countries went against Egypt. Now, who was on Egypt's side? America was on Egypt's side. And America said this to Britain. Britain wanted money, and America says, if you don't pull out, if you don't stop the war in Egypt, we're not going to give you any more money. No more money. And what happened is Britain, they stopped the war. The war ended. The Suez Canal War ended. How does that apply to China? China has all of this economic power against the United States. And what they can do is China holds more federal U.S. debt than any other country in U.S. Treasury bills and other assets. A sale of these bills could cause the value of the dollar to plummet, leading to a major crisis for the U.S. economy. And basically, like the Suez Canal, it could really hurt the United States. Now, how does that apply to Russia? Okay. All right. China, would you like to? Okay, wait. It's Russia. Okay, would you like to read that?
It's difficult for me.
No? Okay. Anybody? Mohammed?
Yes, China, the new economic superpower, has the power to economically cripple America. Russia can diplomatically and economically strengthen ties with China, as relations with America and variable continue to weaken. Russia can encourage China to sell American debt, similar to what the US did with Britain in 1956, ending the British Empire. Chinese diplomacy, low risk, low cost foreign policy option.
Okay, so that's one. Thank you, Mohammed. Okay, let's see. So, number 2, hiring public relations. Russia public relations is very bad right now, as we all know. This is one of the most difficult issues facing Russia. Later, I would like your suggestions on how to at the end of the lecture, on how to improve Russian relations abroad, if anybody has any suggestions. Oh, at the end of the lecture, but go ahead, Arshad.
Oh,
No, please.
well, the World Cup, the football
Yes.
club also gave the opportunity for people to see Russia from another perspective, from rather than CNN and BBC that were an evil empire. People were quite nice to each other, and well, that's one of the examples.
That's a brilliant example, absolutely, yeah.
Can
So-
I give another example?
absolutely.
In October 2017, I participated in the World Festival of Youth and Students, which was held in the Olympic village in Sochi. And we were approximately 25,000 people, young people from all over the world.
25,000?
Yes, 25,000. There were also 5,000 people as volunteers and 5,000 journalists that were there. It was an amazing event, and actually talking about the strengthening relations with Belarus, I remember that we had something like a fair in one of the buildings in the Olympic villages, and each country should like present their own cultural advantages, for example. And I just remember that most of the countries had just a little space to present theirs, but for Belarus, we had the biggest corner, we had media, we had a big, no, not screens, but for playing music, cones, etc. And it really made an impression to me why we had this like, not comparison, but privilege, for example, and why is this? And I wanted to say that this youth festival, it's actually held since 1947 in different countries all over the world in a period of 4, 5, or 6 years. So the next such festival will be held in another country. But for example, this was also an event that wanted to show to the young people, to the future of the planet, for example, what is Russia, how Russia made organized organization, etc., etc. Because, for example, I wanted to say something else. If I can make a comparison between organization in Russia and in the US, because several months after Sochi's festival of youth, I participated in Model United Nations, which was held in New York, in United Nations headquarters in New York.
Yes.
And I actually made for myself comparison between the organization of festival in this scale of Russia with 25,000 people and the organization in USA and United Nations with 2,500 people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And actually, I would like to say that the organization of 25,000 people in Russia was really better than the one in the US. We had some problems with registration, etc. But this is a small thing. I just wanted to say that yes, maybe targeting the new generations, Z, X, Y, etc., the future generations, is a nice policy to show a country, to show the other country what Russia is. For example, not only Russia but other countries. The approach is through younger generations.
That's an excellent idea. I never even heard about that. So
Okay.
That's brilliant.
I
So-
will send the information if you're
Yeah,
interested
yeah.
to all of you.
Yeah,
And one more thing, because Putin held his speech of the opening ceremony and both in the closing ceremony, it was really an honor to see him, actually. And actually, the opening ceremony presented to us some ideas for the from young people like us. They made their ideas into reality. For example, example, you have different problems in Africa, in India, and in the other countries all over the world. And actually, this opening ceremony presented different ideas from different spheres of our life, including friendly economy, friendly to the environment. For example, how to implement wind, water resources, and how to use them more effectively to prevent the deeper crisis in environmental issues, etc. And actually, this concert, opening ceremony of this festival, presented 10 or 15 ideas, which were like played with really nice choreography, and this was a really massive event.
Cool.
I can also pass you the link so you can.
Thank you. Anybody want to read this?
What is the public relations firm for his image?
Huh?
What's the name of the public relations firm that he has hired for his image?
I don't know.
Okay. So it's just an assumption, right?
Oh no, it's not assumption. There
No, there
was,
was a contract with Ketchum,
yeah,
but it was very long ago, and they broke it like I think 3 or 4 years ago.
possibly.
Because they hired Ketchum to provide PR for the Russian presidency in the G8 at that time, and for the G8 summit that was held in St. Petersburg in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. So at that time they were paying Ketchum for in 2005 and 2006, and then for a little while afterwards, like some kind of spontaneous ad hoc works that were done by Ketchum. So then the final kind of dot was put when Putin wrote an article for New York Times, and it was 2014 or 2015, and actually it was Ketchum which was helping to place the article in the New York Times, and then afterwards there were no relations with the PR, US PR agency.
Okay, so anyway, so hiring American public relations firms, low risk, low cost, foreign policy option. So, yeah.
Actually, I think there was an interview which consisted of a few series with some popular.
Oliver Stone, yes, Oliver Stone, yeah, but it's a documentary, so it was not with the PR company, so it was the idea of Oliver Stone, who is like, well, trying to raise his popularity as any film director, so I mean, he found a very good opportunity to make a movie about Putin, yes, it's available on YouTube, so.
Cool. I love this quote.
Also Navalny. And you can see
So I love this quote because you say like, oh, hiring American marketing firms, but as you mentioned, Ketchum was an American marketing firm. So Russia could hire an American marketing firm because American marketing is vastly ahead of Russia, 20 years plus. So, okay.
may I have had a comment?
Yes.
Well, it's obvious that although we're living in a world where we should unite, but still the clash of interest between USA and Russia, well, it probably will be as long as well, Batman and Joker will be fighting along, so, I mean forever. But the question is, if Russia would cooperate with wonderful, for sure, marketing specialists from USA, and they understand that, but in order for their interests to be ahead of Russia, they would especially well, do the opposite of helping them.
Oh yeah, there's always that. I mean, I understand. Yeah, they just do the exact opposite. Yeah. But I'm telling you, there is somebody in America that would sell their mother if you gave them enough money. So yeah, so there's always a marketing firm, but the question is whether it has the best interests of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so cyber attacks. I'm just going to touch on these a lot. I think it was Rashad yesterday. You said that what Putin's doing is thumbs up, is great.
Yeah.
So and then Vlad
Thank
said,
you very much for saying that for all the shows.
yeah, and then Vlad. So I'll tell somebody else. Vlad said that the Kremlin is the best in WhatsApp. So. I mean, what the Kremlin is doing and what
in my defense,
yes.
For the quote,
to qualify it.
Yeah. The answer was, I can't imagine what possibly I would do better
Yes.
than I was doing.
It's brilliant what Putin is doing right now. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm just going to touch upon this really quick. All right.
Can you fit in 10 minutes?
10 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, because
Absolutely.
because we're working
Okay.
1 hour and a half in the break. So.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So give me a 5-minute notice and then I'll wind it up. Okay. So.
In 20 minutes, give him a
Just
notice.
like what it says, like, yeah, thank you so much. So, yeah, okay, so, really quick, the United States has interfered in 81 elections since World War II. These aren't military invasions, these are actually what Russia did to America. 81. So,
Russia did nothing to America.
Russia, I disagree strongly.
There is no evidence. There are allegations in the CIA report. You know, so.
Okay, so.
Unfortunately, he has.
Okay, so the point about this, why is this not coming up? Okay, the point about this is that these elections, many of these elections, were extremely cheap and extremely easy for the United States to destroy, to change. Very easy, like $100,000 easy. So if you look at the history of these, it's extremely easy to change elections. And Russia just used Americans' playbook. So, okay, so I'm currently, along with the global leadership master's degree, I'm currently earning a sociology degree online from the United States at the same time. And I understand sociology and social networks. Russia had a strong influence on the election, despite what Russian and American Republicans say. We can argue about this over coffee, but okay. So, all right. Okay, so this is my.
I feel the slogan in this spring was like, we elected Trump, why shouldn't we elect Putin, right?
Yeah. I'm not going to get into domestic politics about Putin. Okay, so spying. Boom. We'll just talk about this briefly. I got a couple minutes. Okay. I have no idea what this word means, but it's a cool
Don't,
feature.
Don't speak.
Don't speak, yes.
Too much.
Okay. Yes, exactly. As Arshad and as Vlad said, Putin's doing great. So, place more sleeper agents similar to the 2010 illegals program. Does anybody know what the illegals program is? The illegals program was brilliant. In 2010, they found all of these sleeper agents. Do you know what a sleeper agent is?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So can you explain what a sleeper agent is?
So there are like special agencies, forces who work in embassies, and then there are like illegal programs that they may have like the American citizenship and behave as an ordinary people.
That's a spy, yes.
Yeah.
But a sleeper agent
Is
is
the normal guy who actually infiltrates the country under cover or openly, so he works there in a regular firm,
Yeah.
and then it turns out that actually he's an intelligence agent just simply waiting for the moment to wake up and to start his intelligence operations. So
yes. So you could be in the country for 20 years, and then all of a sudden you're operated. You're all of a sudden you're a spy, and so that's what Russia has brilliantly done. That's what Putin has brilliantly done, and that's what they can continue to do. You should look it up.
That's
It's
the overestimate of Putin's genius.
Okay, so there are roughly three. Okay, yeah. So anyway, there's a million. Okay, yeah. So all right. Okay, so all right. Abolish intellectual property. I'm not going to go into that very much. This is just a personal one that I really is important to me, but. So intellectual property accounts for 38.2% of the U.S. economy. if you get rid of copyright, if you get rid of intellectual property in Russia, it would really hurt the United States. Okay, so I've told you guys about the site before, some of you, in our group. Sci-Hub. Anybody want to read this really quick? Practice your English. No, not you. We talk too much. Okay, anybody else?
Then say anyone except some.
Anyone except our shot. Vlad.
Yeah, it's good.
Let's get. You're supposed to read it.
About intellectual property in Russia. Russian-based Sci-Hub currently contains 80% of all research papers published in the world. Revolutionizing science. I risk foreign policy.
Okay, yeah, great. Okay, so let's see. We're almost done here. All right. This is as good as the China one for Russia. Basically, what you do is you stop using the dollars as a currency.
Andrei Kostin at VTB, right?
Pardon?
Andrei Kostin, chairman of the VTB, 2 weeks ago suggested this plan. So getting rid of.
I got Putin's stamp. Yes. Okay. So the entire world economy is run on the dollar. This allows the United States to borrow immense amounts. Any country or countries that threatens this system could cause a global cascade effect. Iraq, before the invasion in 2003, Iraq threatened to stop using the dollar, which some scholars argue was the reason why America invaded, was because Iraq threatened to stop using the dollar. So that's a big one. That's one that we could do next week with Putin's stamp of approval. Okay, so the last one I'm not going to talk about very much, but I think I'm pretty much done, is basically, really quick. Okay, create a NATO Warsaw Pact with allies. An attack on one is an attack on all. So if anybody attacks Iraq or Iran, if anybody attacks Iran, then it's like attacking Russia. So very high risk. So anyway. Okay, this is my biggest question. And this is what, in doing this and thinking about this for literally decades, it's like there's this beautiful video, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it says that Russia has 5 allies, like 5 treaties with 5 different countries, and the United States has 54. And so my biggest question, and maybe you guys could answer it, is how does Russia become more friendly with other nations? How do they make more treaties with other nations? Because that's important. I think I'll end right there. 1 second here.
It's not the treaties that are important, it's spiritual unity.
Spiritual unity? Okay, so I love this. This is brilliant. I just love this. This makes me laugh all the time. Russia wants war. Look how close Russia puts their country to our American bases. So American bases here. Anyway. Okay. Should I include the pigeon one? Should I do the pigeon one?
Oh, yeah, why not?
Okay.
You showed me it so many times, so.
Okay, so criticisms, not questions, but criticisms. And then I'm gonna finish this. I love this quote. I showed it to Masha and I showed it to yeah. Anyway, so I'm done.
So this is the perception of American, of the foreign policy of Russia, like, and talking more about America actually, rather than about Russia.
Oh, flash.